She said, "I can't be with someone who has no future," and walked out. I said, "Okay." The next morning, I accepted the six-figure job offer in New York I hadn't told her about. She found out when my farewell party was all over social media. Let me start from the beginning. 3 months ago, I was sitting in my cramped studio apartment, staring at an email that would change everything. The subject line read, "Senior Software Developer Position, Final Offer." I'd been through 4 rounds of interviews with this Manhattan tech company, and they were offering me more money than I'd ever imagined making. The catch? I had to decide within 2 weeks, and if I accepted, I'd start in 3 months. I minimized the email and looked across the room at her. She was curled up on my secondhand couch, scrolling through her phone, completely unaware that our entire future hung in the balance of my next decision. We'd been together for 2 years, living together for 8 months, and I thought we were building something real. The timing couldn't have been worse. She'd just started her dream job at a local marketing firm, finally using her communications degree after years of retail work. Her whole family lived within 20 miles of us. Mine too, for that matter. Moving to New York would mean leaving everything behind, but it also meant finally breaking free from the cycle of dead-end jobs and financial stress that had defined my 20s. I decided to wait. The company said I had 2 weeks, so I'd take my time and figure out how to bring up the possibility of a cross-country move. Maybe she'd be excited about the adventure. Maybe she'd see it as the opportunity it was. I never got the chance to find out. The conversation that ended us happened on a Tuesday night in March. I'd just gotten home from my current job, a mind-numbing data entry position at a small insurance company that barely paid enough to cover my half of the bills. She was already upset about something when I walked in, pacing around the kitchen with that look she got when she'd been stewing about something all day. She started talking about her coworker's boyfriend, how he'd just gotten promoted to regional manager at his company, how they were looking at houses together, planning their future. The comparison was clear, even before she made it explicit. Here was a guy with ambition, with direction, with prospects. And then there was me. She told me she'd been thinking about us, about where we were heading. She said she looked at me and saw someone who was comfortable being stagnant, someone who didn't push himself, someone who seemed content with mediocrity. The words came out in a rush, like she'd been rehearsing them. Then came the sentence that sealed our fate. She couldn't be with someone who had no future. I stood there in the kitchen doorway, still wearing my jacket, and felt something cold settle in my chest. Not heartbreak, not yet. Something sharper than that. The unfairness of it, maybe. The irony that sat like a weight in my pocket, in the form of an unread email offering me everything she claimed I lacked. I could have told her right then. Could have pulled out my phone and shown her the offer letter, watched her face change as she realized how wrong she was. But something stopped me. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was the realization that if she couldn't see my worth without a 6-figure salary attached to it, then she never really saw me at all. So instead, I said the one word that would haunt her for months. Okay. That was it. No argument, no pleading, no desperate promises to change. Just acknowledgement. She seemed stunned by my calm acceptance, like she'd expected me to fight for us. But what was the point? She'd already decided I wasn't enough. She moved out that weekend, taking her half of everything and leaving behind only a few forgotten items and the faint scent of her perfume. I spent that Sunday alone in the suddenly too quiet apartment, staring at the job offer email I'd been afraid to open in front of her. I accepted it Monday morning. The next 3 months passed in a blur of preparation and deliberate silence. I gave my 2 weeks' notice at the insurance company, found a sublet for my apartment, and started making arrangements for the biggest move of my life. The company was covering relocation expenses and helping me find temporary housing in Manhattan while I searched for a permanent place. I didn't tell anyone about the job at first. Not my parents, not my friends, and certainly not her. It felt like holding a secret weapon, something precious and powerful that I wasn't ready to share. Besides, she'd made it clear that my life was no longer her concern. But secrets have a way of growing heavier with time. By May, I started letting people know I was leaving. My parents were shocked, but supportive. My few close friends were excited for me, planning to visit once I got settled. The hardest part was watching them realize that if they wanted to stay in touch, they'd have to make the effort, because I was done being the one who always reached out. The farewell party wasn't my idea. My coworker at the insurance company suggested it, and word spread faster than I expected. What started as a small goodbye drinks thing at a local bar turned into something much bigger. People I hadn't talked to in months were showing up, wanting to wish me well, or just curious about the guy who was brave enough to chase something bigger. I didn't invite her, didn't even consider it. But her best friend was there. They'd stayed close after our breakup, and I knew the news would travel fast. The party was actually fun. For the first time in months, I felt like the protagonist of my own life instead of a supporting character in everyone else's stories. People kept asking about the job, about New York, about how I'd managed to land something so impressive. I tried to be modest, but it was hard to hide my excitement. Someone took pictures. Someone else posted them on social media. By the end of the night, my farewell party was trending in our small social circle's corner of the internet. Group photos, congratulations messages, people talking about my amazing new opportunity and how proud they were of me. She saw it all. The first message came at 2 in the morning, just hours after I'd gotten home from the party. A simple text asking if we could talk. Then another an hour later asking if the job posts were real. Then a longer message asking why I'd never mentioned any of this when we were together. I didn't respond to any of them. The call started the next day. Voice messages that grew increasingly frantic as she pieced together the timeline. She'd figured out that I must have had the offer before we broke up, that I'd been sitting on a life-changing opportunity while she lectured me about my lack of ambition. She wanted to know why I'd hidden it from her. She wanted to know if I'd taken the job out of spite. She wanted to know if we could talk, if there was still a chance, if maybe we'd been too hasty in ending things. I listened to every message and deleted them without responding. Update 1. The morning I left for New York, I was loading the last of my boxes into the moving truck when she showed up. I hadn't seen her in person since the day she moved out, and the months had changed both of us. She looked smaller somehow, less certain than the confident woman who'd walked away from our relationship. She stood at the end of my driveway, clearly nervous about approaching. The movers were finishing up, and I was doing a final walkthrough of the empty apartment. When I came back outside, she was still there, like she was waiting for permission to speak. She started talking before I could decide whether to acknowledge her or not. She apologized for how things ended, said she'd been scared about our future and had projected her own fears onto our relationship. She admitted she'd been wrong about me, wrong about my potential, wrong about everything. The words tumbled out in a rush. How she'd spent the past 3 months regretting our breakup. How she'd realized she'd made the biggest mistake of her life. How she'd been too proud to reach out until she saw the party pictures and understood what she'd really lost. Then came the question I'd been dreading. Would I consider staying? Or if not staying, would I consider taking her with me? I stood there next to the moving truck, keys in my hand, and felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, no vindictive pleasure. Just a hollow recognition that she was 3 months too late. I told her I appreciated the apology, but that her timing was interesting. I pointed out that she was only having second thoughts because she'd discovered I was valuable in ways she hadn't recognized. I asked her what would have happened if I'd stayed in town, if I'd never taken the job, if I'd remained the same person she deemed unworthy of her future. She couldn't answer that question, and we both knew why. I told her I hoped she'd find what she was looking for, but that it wouldn't be with me. Then I got in my car and drove away, leaving her standing in the driveway of our old life. Update 2. New York has been everything I hoped and more. The job is challenging in the best way, the kind of work that makes me excited to get up in the morning. I've got a nice 1-bedroom in Brooklyn with a view of the Manhattan skyline, and I've made friends with my neighbors and coworkers. For the first time in my adult life, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. She's tried to maintain contact. Birthday wishes, holiday greetings, occasional updates about mutual friends. I respond politely but briefly. There's no point in being cruel, but there's also no point in pretending we're friends. About 2 months after I moved, I heard through the grapevine that she'd quit her job and moved to another city, claiming she needed a fresh start. Her best friend mentioned that she'd been struggling with the breakup, that she'd been telling people I was the one that got away. The irony isn't lost on me. She let me go before she knew what she had, and now she's the one without a future plan, the one starting over in a new place with no connections and no clear direction. I should feel vindicated. Hell, maybe I should feel sorry for her. Instead, I mostly feel grateful. Grateful that she showed me who she really was before we got in any deeper. Grateful that her rejection forced me to bet on myself in a way I might never have otherwise. Update 3. 6 months into my New York life, I was grabbing coffee before work when I ran into someone from our old social circle. He was in town for business and recognized me on the street. Over a quick catch-up coffee, he filled me in on the hometown gossip. She'd moved back after only 4 months in her new city. The fresh start hadn't worked out. She'd taken a job that was a step backward from her previous position, and she'd struggled to build a social life from scratch. Now she was back living with her parents, working a temporary position while she figured out her next move. He mentioned that she'd been asking about me, wanting to know if anyone had visited me or if I ever talked about coming back. The picture he painted was of someone who'd completely lost her confidence, who'd gone from being certain about what she wanted to being paralyzed by the fear of making another wrong choice. Part of me felt bad for her, but a bigger part of me recognized that this was the natural consequence of her decisions. She'd gambled that she could do better than me, and when that bet didn't pay off, she tried to run away from the reality she'd created. Meanwhile, I was thriving. I'd gotten a promotion at work, moved to a better apartment, and started dating someone new, a brilliant architect who saw my ambition as an asset rather than something I needed to prove to her. The contrast wasn't lost on me. She'd left me because she thought I had no future, and in doing so, she'd sabotaged her own. Final update. A year later, I was back in our hometown for my cousin's wedding. The entire weekend was a reminder of the life I'd left behind. The same faces, the same conversations, the same limited horizons that had once felt like the only possibilities. I didn't see her at the wedding, but I heard she was there. Several people mentioned that she'd asked about me, that she'd seemed interested in hearing about my life in New York. A few well-meaning relatives suggested I should reach out to her, that people change, that maybe we could work things out. I smiled and nodded and changed the subject every time. On my last night in town, I was having drinks with my old college roommate when she finally appeared. She looked good, healthier than she had that morning at my apartment, more put together than the broken person I'd heard about through mutual friends. She'd apparently landed a better job and was slowly rebuilding her life. She approached our table hesitantly, asked if she could join us for a few minutes. My friend, sensing the tension, made an excuse about needing to make a phone call and left us alone. We talked for maybe 20 minutes. She told me about her new job, asked about mine. She mentioned that she'd seen pictures of me and my girlfriend on social media, said we looked happy together. There was a sadness in her voice that I recognized, the weight of choices that couldn't be undone. Finally, she said what she'd really come to say. She told me she'd learned a lot about herself over the past year, that she understood now how badly she'd misjudged our relationship. She said she didn't expect anything from me, but she wanted me to know that I'd been right to leave, right to build something better for myself. She thanked me for not taking her back when she'd asked, said she realized now that it would have been for all the wrong reasons. I told her I was glad she was doing better, that I hoped she'd continue to grow and find what she was looking for. And I meant it. Her rejection had been the push I needed to transform my life, and for that, I was genuinely grateful. We hugged goodbye, and I knew it would be the last time we'd have a conversation like that. She was part of my old life, and I'd worked too hard building my new one to look backward now. The next morning, I flew back to New York, to my real life, to the future I'd built for myself after someone told me I didn't have one. Sometimes the best revenge isn't dramatic confrontation or elaborate schemes. Sometimes it's simply becoming the person you were always capable of being, with or without someone else's approval. She said I had no future. I proved her wrong by building one without her in it. If you'd like to see more stories like this, a gentle tap on the subscribe button would mean the world to us. Please subscribe.